Hi again, physiologists. I want to tell you about the difference between recruitment and summation because even though we discuss this in class, it's a very common source of confusion. And I think the reason it's confusing is that in both cases, something happens and the something sounds like an increase in something, and the result is increased tension or muscle force. And all those things are true. So, how are they different? So, this is the slide from your book that deals with summation, and then the ultimate goal or endpoint of summation is tetanus, which is a smooth movement. So, it's based on what happens inside an individual muscle cell or muscle fiber. And you'll see that's different with recruitment. So with summation, the idea is that we don't want to have individual muscle twitches because when we have a real movement, it doesn't consist of individual little twitches, but a smooth movement. So if I want to scratch behind my right ear right now, then I need to smoothly move my hand back and wait until the hand is in the right position and then make other movements to scratch, right? But this movement of my arm is not a jerky set of little twitches, but one smooth movement. That is, at no point does the muscle relax, at least not fully, as it moves up. And we don't want it to contract and relax, contract and relax, contract and relax. Even if it contracted a little more than it relaxed, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that wouldn't make a smooth movement. How can we do that? Well, the only way we can make a smooth movement is for the motor proteins to keep attaching and reattaching, detaching and reattaching and reattaching without ever stopping. And that will happen easily enough if one condition is satisfied, which is that the calcium level in the cell is maintained at a sufficient level for that to happen. Of course, there also has to be ATP and so on. But that's really the thing that has to be controlled by the nervous system, is the calcium level. So if an action potential comes, calcium eventually gets released as a result of that, as you know from excitation-contraction coupling. But if there's no more action potential, the calcium level will start to drop, and in the sense of this movement, my hand would go back down to its resting level. So to keep it going on its journey, we need the calcium level to stay high. And since action potentials are what ultimately causes the calcium level to stay high, the way we can keep it high is by maintaining a high frequency of action potentials from that motor neuron. So if we have a high frequency of action potentials, the calcium level stays high, it doesn't drop down again, and then we can get this nice smooth movement. So in this figure, remember tension is the movement, well, not the movement, but the force that's generated by that muscle. There isn't always movement. If, for example, you're trying to pick up something really heavy, you have force generated in your muscle, but you don't necessarily get any movement. So one twitch would be like action potential calcium release, and then the calcium drops back down again, right? And this is summation, where you get action potential calcium release, and the calcium just starts to drop back down again. So you lose a little force, and then, oh, here comes another action potential and more calcium, and so on. And ideally, what we want is for there not to be any uppy-downy, right? Not any more force, less force, but just, yeah, we're generating all the force we need to move my arm up to my ear. And that's what's happening here. It's just smooth, right? Smooth line means a smooth movement. Okay, so by maintaining a high action potential frequency, we can make a movement smooth. However, we're not making it stronger in a whole muscle way. Summation is something that happens in each individual muscle fiber. Whatever fibers happen to be participating in that movement. Maybe it's a few, maybe it's a lot, but each one of them individually is going through this process of summation. Recruitment, then, on the other hand, has to do with how many muscle fibers are involved in that movement, right? So, here is again this picture that's also in the big picture muscle video that I made from your textbook, showing that yeah, as you have these motor neurons controlling different parts of the muscle, if I have a movement that doesn't require very much muscle, such as reaching up my arm to scratch behind my ear, I probably am only activating a couple of motor units, and therefore only a small number of muscle fibers are being used for this movement. But if I were picking up something bigger, actually it just happens that I'm in the room with bigger things to pick up at the moment. All right, so this is 10 pounds. Okay, so if I were lifting up this 10-pound weight up to, I don't know, scratch behind my ear with it, now I still want a nice smooth movement, so I want summation in all these muscles. But now I need to recruit more muscles to be involved in this movement, right? Because now I have to lift 10 pounds in addition to the weight of my forearm that I was already lifting before. So now I need summation, same as before, but I also need to recruit, just like recruitment in the military sense, I need to recruit more participants, more muscle fibers to participate. So if we look at this picture over here again, right, then I might be able to do with just one neuron, that's probably not true, to lift my whole forearm, but let's say so, right, to get a few of these purple neurons, purple muscle fibers working to lift up my arm to scratch behind my ear. But if I want to lift up the 10-pound weight to scratch behind my ear, then I have to also activate neuron 1 and neuron 3. And remember, activate for a neuron means it's having action potentials. I need to have action potentials in these two neurons, and then I activate all of these muscles, and I have enough force to move the whole weight up to my ear. Your book doesn't have a super picture of this. This is a very general picture of the idea from another textbook by the same publisher, that all it's showing is that as you recruit more muscle fibers, you can produce more muscle force. So this is now the added force of any of the fibers in the muscle. Okay, so key takeaway, recruitment has to do with a movement that requires additional force, as in lifting a heavier weight or opposing a greater counterforce, right? It occurs across the whole muscle. The question in recruitment is how much of the muscle, how many motor units of the muscle are participating in the movement? Whereas summation, its purpose is to create a smooth movement in any movement that's happening. It doesn't have to do with how strong that movement needs to be. Rather, its goal is to create a smooth movement rather than one that's jerky because of the up and down dropping of calcium within the cell. I hope that helps. I know it's a confusing thing, but always think summation within a cell. Recruitment is how many cells, how many muscle cells are we using. Okay, good luck.